Hello, my friend. The way of service can and will, God willing, save the world. It can save individual lives from meaninglessness and failure. And if we can win the argument of service over selfishness on a large scale, then we can convert the current culture of exploitation and destruction into one of deep care and prosperity. I believe the world is ripe for this change. It is safe to say that the world is in a sad state today. The vast majority of power, money, and influence are directed in a way that most people can see as objectively bad. War is an obvious example. There are many wars occurring as I speak. Billions are spent killing people, and the stock market heads to new highs whenever a new war is announced. This reveals the priorities of our current culture and economy. This is just one example, and when we look at the mainstream position and direction of most things, they are profoundly negative. But I think that there are reasons to feel optimistic and hopeful. Ironically, one of these reasons is that these negative aspects of the present have become so grating to the majority of people that the time is ripe for a fundamental change of attitude and priorities. I also believe that old falsehoods are beginning to fall away and make clear that the way of service is not only morally correct, but also pragmatically correct. And this means that we can win the argument for doing the right thing on every level that we make it. These negative aspects of society have become so glaringly obvious and distasteful that everyone is triggered. I know I have been many times. In fact, this entire project, The Way of Service, was born out of a moment of frustration and an insight that converted my triggered rage into a glorious epiphany and vision for the future. I promise I'll have better stories than this later, but it was because my printer broke, okay? Basically, I've had this printer for at least 10 years, but suddenly there was an inexplicable and unfixable error that there's no reason for. It just started. I can't find the reason, and there's no answer on the internet. So based on my research and estimation of the way other things work, it's an error that was designed to destroy the printer so that I need to buy a new one. Now this has caused me a good deal of inconvenience, but what really struck me was that someone made this decision to send this code to my printer. Now, I could be wrong about this particular incident with my printer, but I don't think so. But a bigger example is that Apple is now paying out $500 million from a lawsuit in which they were found liable for sending updates that purposefully slowed down older iPhones and thus drove people to purchase new ones. I'm sure you've experienced something like this in your own life if you have any use of technology, and since you're watching this, I'm sure you do. So while I find the issue of war as personally abhorrent, it's actually pretty difficult to argue against war in specific cases, as both sides of every conflict usually have some legitimate concerns, and arriving at a resolution is never simple. However, the question of whether a company should profit through deceit, manipulation, and outright lying is not ambiguous. This example of my printer and Apple's iPhones to me serve as a very simple example of the opposite of the decisions that people can and should be making to serve one another, rather than trying to get one up on the next guy. So when my printer broke, and there were several other things that I had seen and noticed that day, some of which I need to be careful about talking about on YouTube, perhaps in the news, which will never disappoint someone looking to be disappointed, I was in a very sorry state of anger and rage about the state of things. Somehow, though, after a few minutes of stewing and feeling sorry for myself, I had an epiphany. What if I could actually convince people to treat each other better? This realization lined up with everything that I had been studying, reading, and meditating on since the beginning of the year, and I'll have to tell that story in another video. It suddenly became obvious to me that this was one of the strongest and most important arguments that I could make, and it applied to everyone, everywhere. The way of service applies to our individual relationships, to our career and business decisions, and to the direction we hope and wish to see in the world at large. And what I believe is the best news of all, every spiritual tradition, ancient prophet, and modern spiritual research reveal that the way of service is ordained by God, supported by the flow of the universe, and is basically the way to get everything you could ever dream of, and more. I believe that companies that adopt the way of service will defeat those that do not in the long run. Eventually, the companies that continue to find ways to cheat their customers will lose to their competitors who make it clear that they truly care about their customers. Once a customer realizes that a company doesn't care about them, it's pretty hard to regain that trust, and makes it very easy for a new company to come in and displace them. In our interpersonal relationships with those closest to us, adopting the way of service transforms every conflict into an opportunity and dissolves all animosity into love. It is a beautiful art of skillfully relating to others, adapting to understand them, and allowing them to understand you. Now, I want to make this distinction right away, as this is my first video on this project. The way of service is not one of disregarding yourself and putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own, no matter what. Rather, it is following the flow of your life and reminding yourself to keep an intention of service, knowing that sometimes you must serve yourself to be of the best service to others. It also means sharing your gift or gifts, which often involves an exchange of value and reciprocity. If you do not seek balance in these exchanges, you will quickly destroy yourself and become a martyr, which is actually very selfish. It is helpful, especially in difficult circumstances, to remember that every situation will go better if we adopt the way of service, instead of seeking a selfish outcome based on our egoic desires. In real life, this will actually result in our needs being met in a far more effortless fashion. In my experience, it also results in great joy, and most importantly, meaning in our life. Based on my study and meditations, I have realized that the highest pursuit of all human beings is that of better and more meaningful relationships. Our network of relationships defines our position in society. Our wealth, our health, happiness, and the meaning that we experience. The true state of our relationships is unavoidable, as when we act in selfish or deceitful ways, we always know inside what the truth is, and thus we cannot find peace if we act that way. This reality of the primacy of relationships is fundamental to the way of service, and I believe it extends into the realm of spirit, through and beyond time and space. The way of service is not actually based on action, but rather it is based on intention. To follow it is to be in a state of flow with the universe, and to be able to skillfully navigate the complexities of reality while maintaining this intention. If it was easy, the world would be a very different place, and it would probably be boring. This is the great challenge of our time, and I look forward to tackling it with you, my friend. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and/or a comment. I would love to hear what you think about this. And give me a subscription if you are inclined. I have been working to put together a lot of content, and I hope to publish it in the coming months, and I hope you will enjoy it. I look forward to being of service to you and to anyone else that this path brings my way. And I look forward to working with you on bringing this way of service to the world, along with all the ideas and gifts that you have to give to make the world a far better place than it is today. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.